Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you can do me a favor, please pause the video and get your mom and dad. I need to talk to them for a minute. Thank you. Hey, parents. So this week is our Passover special, and we'll be hitting almost all verses about Passover. Because we're going all throughout the scripture, there are some stories with Passover that has some ideas and situations you don't normally think of going with Passover. So please review the things listed up on the screen. If it's anything that you don't normally see in the regular first Passover story or in Yeshua's death story, it's all going to be in our middle story that's the prophets and the kings. So if you need to skip that for your family, know that that's the section that it's at. Please feel free to skip around for what's suitable for your family. The timestamps are in the description. Also, I want to make an announcement. We're doing the Passover lesson and the unleavened bread lesson early, but when y'all's Passover and unleavened bread gets here, make sure you take some pictures of the things y'all are doing, your services, of your meals that you're making, and share them with us. We're going to do another slideshow like we did for Sukkot. Everybody seemed to really enjoy that. So I will have a Drive folder link down in the description of this video. You can upload there. You can also email it to us or send it to us on Facebook. All right, let's get going with our lesson. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Oh, one more thing. This lesson is a very long lesson filled with a lot of information. So please, if your children need a break, they need to break it up. Make sure you go at their pace so they can get as much out of it as possible. Feel free to hit that pause button, hit that rewind button, come back on another day. Take it at their pace. All right, now let's get into our lesson.
Hey, what's up to it, kids? Joey here, and I'm going to be your host on this week's episode of Trained Up in Torah. Welcome back. I don't know if you can see what's going on behind me, but it is absolutely beautiful today. Temperatures are 82 degrees. Now remember, I live in Georgia, so 82 to me is beautiful. Might be really hot to other people. Might not be so hot, you know, if you live down in Florida or maybe even further than that. But for us, it's gorgeous. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but we got the birds outside and they're chirping. Things are out here blooming. As a matter of fact, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Every time it gets to be this time of year, I start sneezing. The reason is because it's springtime. Matter of fact, today is the second day of spring as I'm filming this. And every time spring comes, you know what comes with it? Pollen. And I sneeze at pollen. That's not all that comes when spring comes. You know what else comes? Yahweh's feast times. That's right. And today on this episode of Trained Up in Torah, we're going to be talking about one feast in particular. We're going to be talking about the Feast of Passover. Now, I love Passover. One of the reasons why I love Passover is because we know why we do it. We've got other feasts that we're not quite sure why. So like, for instance, the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. It just says you have a remembrance of blowing of trumpets. It doesn't tell us why we actually do it. So Yahweh told us why. And as we go through the scriptures today, I want you to keep your ears peeled. I want you to listen really good. And I want you to see if you can tell me why exactly it is Yahweh said we keep Passover. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to have our prayer. We're going to have song. Then we're going to have Miss Kaylee come out and read us the story of the first Passover. Now, I need to give a little disclaimer on this one because this one's going to be a little bit different than other episodes. So we're going to go and we're going to read that story. Then Miss Kaylee's going to go in the second segment and she's going to go through and look at other instances in Scripture where it talks about Passover. And then probably in the third one, she's going to look at during the New Testament whenever that happened. So just bear with us because it's going to be a progression of things as it goes. But here's something else I need to tell you too. This is for not only Utuit kids, but this is for Utuit parents as well. Remember, there are lots and lots and lots of ways to be able to keep Passover. There's lots and lots of ways that people interpret how to do Passover. And as you'll see, even the Tuit teachers may do it differently. So just realize that we're all trying to serve Yahweh the best we know how, and bear with us. And if you have any questions about anything, we really suggest that you go and search us out as a family, specifically you kids. You go and you talk to your mom and dad about it if something gets said that you're not familiar with. But anyway, let's get in this week's episode, and I'll see you here in just a minute.
Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vayed.
Shabbat Shalom, y'all, and happy Passover. We're going to take a quick second and have a prayer before our song. Abba, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for us all being able to be here together and learn and grow in your ways and your knowledge. Please bless all of those who have worked to help put this together. And please bless all of those who are here with us. And we just pray that you would guide us and direct us and help us to do your will. Thank you so much for each and every blessing that you have given us. We just ask all of these things, Father, in your Son's most precious name. Hallelujah. Now, before we jump into our song, I did want to take a second and let you guys know that if you have any little maracas or even just a glass jar with some dry beans or rice in it with a nice tight lid, only with your parents' help, of course, feel free to get those out, pause the video, and you can use those to play along with the little song that we're about to do. Shabbat Shalom.
This is Miss Awen with your song, Go Down Moshe.
When Israel's in Egypt's land,
let my people go.
oppressed
So hard they could not stand. Let my people go.
Go
Down Moshe, way down in Egypt's land. Tell all Pharaoh, let my people go.
Thus
Say Yahweh, Moshe says, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go.
your foes
Shall not be
before you
stand. Let my people go.
and you'll possess all Canaan's land.
Let my people go. Let my people go. Happy Passover. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Passover.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is a special week on Trained Up in Torah. We're going to be talking all about Passover. We're going to be looking all through the scripture from the Torah, all the way through different kings throughout history, and all the way to Yeshua. This is going to be a lot of information, but this is a very important appointed time of Yahweh. And so I want to make sure that we give a lot of honor and esteem to Yahweh and get a full picture of all that he has to say about this day. Normally, Passover and unleavened bread, since they're right there touching each other one day and then the next week all there together, are normally lumped together as one festival. But there's actually different commands given for Passover and for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And for the sake of time, we've broke it up. So next week will be the Feast of Unleavened Bread special, and this week will be Passover, so that we can make sure that we touch on all the places that it talks about it as much as we possibly can. Now, may not get quite all of them, but I'm going to try to get as much in there as I can. So, wasn't that long ago on Trained Up in Torah, we read about the first Passover ever. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that segment again, and we're going to watch it right now, and then we'll get going on new ones that we haven't shared on Trained Up in Torah yet. All right, let's get going. We're going to be reading Exodus 11, 12, and 13. Are you ready? Well, before we start, I want to remind you, remember we've talked before about how the chapter numbers and the verse numbers weren't originally in the original scriptures when they were written, and that people added that later to make it easier to find what you're looking for in scripture and to share with people. Well, sometimes they put in breaks, like separating chapters, where it didn't really make sense to put a break there. And this week is one of those places. So we're going to back up and read the last 3 verses that we read last week in chapter 10. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. However, Yahweh hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me. Watch yourself. See my face no more, for in the day that you see my face, you die." And Moshe said, "You have spoken rightly. Never again do I see your face." And Yahweh said to Moshe, I am bringing yet one more plague on Pharaoh and on Mitzrayim. After that, he is going to let you go from here. When he lets you go, he shall drive you out from here altogether. Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbor, and every woman from her neighbor, objects of silver and objects of gold. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the eyes of the Mitzrites. And the man, Moshe, was very great in the land of Mitzrayim, in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants and in the eyes of the people. And Moshe said, Thus said Yahweh, About midnight I am going out into the midst of Mitzrayim, and all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of cattle. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Mitzrayim, such as there has never been or ever be again. But against any of the children of Israel no dog shall move its tongue, against man or against beast, so that you know that Yahweh makes distinction between Mitzrayim and Yisrael. And all these servants of yours shall come down to me, and bow down to me, saying, Get out, you and all the people at your feet, and after that I shall go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in great displeasure. But Yahweh said to Moshe, Pharaoh is not going to listen to you, in order to multiply my wonders in the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh. However, Yahweh hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not let the children of Israel go out of his land. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Speak to all the congregation of Yisrael, saying, On the 10th day of this month, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb, according to the household of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the beans. According to each man's need, you make your count for the lamb. Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Yisrael shall kill it between the evenings. And they shall take some of the blood, and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire. With unleavened bread and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roast it in fire, its head with its legs and its inward parts. And do not leave of it until morning, and whatever remains of it until morning you are to burn with fire. And this is how you eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Passover of Yahweh. And I shall pass through the land of Mitzrayim on that night, and shall smite all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast. And on all the mighty ones of Mitzrayim I shall execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I smite the land of Mitzrayim. And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall observe it as a festival to Yahweh throughout your generations. Observe it as a festival and everlasting law. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause leaven to cease from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Yisrael. And on the first day is a set-apart gathering, and on the 7th day you have a set-apart gathering. No work at all is done on them. Only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared by you. And you shall guard the festival of unleavened bread. For on this same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim. And you shall guard this day throughout your generations, an everlasting law. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Yisrael, whether sojourner or native of the land. Do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. And Moshe called for all the elders of Yisrael and said to them, Go out and take lambs for yourselves, according to your clans, and slaughter the Passover lamb. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. And you, none of you shall go out of the door of his house until morning. And Yahweh shall pass on to smite the Mitzrites, and shall see the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts. And Yahweh shall pass over the door, and not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And you shall guard this word as a law for you and your sons forever. And it shall be, when your children say to you, What does this service mean to you? Then you shall say, It is the Passover slaughtering of Yahweh, who passed over the houses of the children of Yisrael in Mitzrayim, when he smote the Mitzrites and delivered our households. And the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. And the children of Yisrael went away and did so, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. And it came to be at midnight that Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Mitzrites, and there was a great cry in Mitzrayim, for there was not a house where there was not a dead one. Then he called for Moshe and Aaron by night, and said, Arise, go out from the midst of my people, both you and the children of Yisrael, and go, serve Yahweh as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and go. Then you shall bless me too. And the Mitzrites urged the people to hasten to send them away out of the land, for they said, We are all dying. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Yisrael had done according to the word of Moshe. And they had asked from the Mitzrites objects of silver and objects of gold and garments. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the eyes of the Mitzrites, so that they gave them what they asked, and they plundered the Mitzrites. And the children of Israel set out from Ramesses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the little ones. And a mixed multitude went up with them too, also flocks and herds, very much livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Mitzrayim, and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves. And the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Mitzrayim was 430 years. And it came to be, at the end of the 430 years, on that same day, it came to be that all the divisions of Yahweh went out from the land of Mitzrayim. It is a night to be observed unto Yahweh for bringing them out of the land of Mitzrayim. This night is unto Yahweh, to be observed by all the children of Israel throughout their generations. And Yahweh said to Moshe and Aaron, This is the law of the Passover. No son of a stranger is to eat of it, but any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bones of it. All the congregation of Israel are to perform it. And when a stranger sojourns with you, and shall perform the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and perform it. And he shall be as a native of the land. But let no uncircumcised eat of it. There is one Torah for the native born, and for the stranger who sojourns among you. And all the children of Israel did as Yahweh commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. And it came to be on that same day that Yahweh brought the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim, according to their divisions. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Set apart to me all the firstborn, the one opening the womb among the children of Israel, among man and among beast, it is mine. And Moshe said to the people, Remember this day in which you went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. For by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. Today you are going out in the month of Abib, and it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites, and of the Hittites, and of the Amorites, and of the Hivites, and of the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day is a festival to Yahweh. Unleavened bread is to be eaten the 7 days, and whatever is leavened is not to be seen with you. And leaven is not to be seen with you within all your border. And you shall inform your son in that day, saying, It is because of what Yahweh did for me when I came up from Mitzrayim. And it shall be as a sign to you on your hand, and as a reminder between your eyes, that the Torah of Yahweh is to be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yahweh has brought you out of Mitzrayim, and you shall guard this law at its appointed time from year to year. And it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, that you shall pass over to Yahweh everyone opening the womb. And every firstborn that comes from your livestock, the males belong to Yahweh. And every firstborn of a donkey you are to ransom with a lamb. And if you do not ransom it, then you shall break its neck. And every firstborn of man among your sons you are to ransom. And it shall be, when your son asks you in time to come, saying, What is this? Then you shall say to him, By strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. And it came to be, when Pharaoh was too hardened to let us go, that Yahweh killed every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I am slaughtering to Yahweh every male that opens the womb, but every firstborn of my sons I ransom. And it shall be as a sign on your hand, and as frontlets between your eyes. For by strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim. And it came to be, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was nearer. For Elohim said, Lest the people regret when they see fighting, and return to Mitzrayim. So Elohim led the people around by way of the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds. And the children of Yisrael went up armed from the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him, for he certainly made the children of Yisrael swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring my bones from here with you. And they departed from Sukkot, and encamped in Etham, at the edge of the wilderness. And Yahweh went before them by day in a column of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a column of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. The column of cloud did not cease by day, nor the column of fire by night before the people. That is an amazing story, isn't it? They obeyed Yahweh, and he was there to protect them and keep the destroyer from coming in. He would look and see if they listened, and if they did, he would pass over, and they would be protected. You know, it's kind of like that today. If we obey Yahweh, he's there to protect us and to watch out for us. Did you know that if we love him, we'll guard his commands? And then he'll show that he loves us and take care of us. That had a bunch of the rules for Passover in it. It had the rules for what they were supposed to do that night. And then it goes on to retell which things you're supposed to do forever throughout your generations. Now, one of the things that it says is that no uncircumcised is supposed to eat of it, and that the laws are the same for the native born as it is for the foreigner who dwells among you. Did you know that Yahweh is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that he doesn't change? That his ways are his ways for his people and for the people who joined with his people to be his people as well. Well, let's go look in some other places and see what other things the Torah has to say about Passover. All right, time to get the handy dandy scripture searcher, and I'm going to type in Passover. Okay, the first things that come up are the ones that we just read. Then it jumps to Exodus 34:25. Do not offer the blood of my slaughtering with leaven, and do not let the slaughtering of the festival of Passover remain until morning. So we got that already, didn't we? We learned that before, that it was supposed to be with unleavened bread, and you had to burn it up. It couldn't remain until morning. So let's see what else there is. All right, in Leviticus 23:5, it says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings, is the Passover to Yahweh. So then it goes into Festival of Unleavened Bread, so we'll save that for next week. Okay, now we're going to jump to Numbers 9, starting in verse 1. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai. in the first month of the 2nd year after they had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, saying, Now let the children of Israel perform the Passover at its appointed time. On the 14th day of this month between the evenings, perform it at its appointed time. According to all its laws and right rulings, you perform it. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel to perform the Passover. So they performed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month between the evenings in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yahweh commanded Moshe, so the children of Israel did. But there were men who were defiled for the being of a man. That means they were unclean because of being around somebody that was dead. So that they were not able to perform the Passover on that day. So they came before Moshe and Aaron that day. And those men said to him, We are defiled for the being of a man. Why are we withheld from bringing near the offering of Yahweh at its appointed time among the children of Israel? And Moshe said to them, Wait, let me hear what Yahweh commands concerning you. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, When any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Passover of Yahweh. On the 14th day of the 2nd month, between the evenings they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs they eat it. They do not leave of it until morning, and they do not break a bone of it. According to all the laws of the Passover they perform it. But the man who is clean and is not on a journey, and has failed to perform the Passover, that same being shall be cut off from among his people, because he did not bring the offering of Yahweh at its appointed time. That man bears his sin. And when a stranger sojourns among you, he shall perform the Passover of Yahweh. He shall do so according to the law of the Passover, and according to its right ruling. You have one law both for the stranger and for the native of the land. Okay, let's jump to Numbers 26:16. And in the first month, on the 14th day, is the Passover of Yahweh. So what day is the Passover of Yahweh? It's the 14th day of the first month. Okay, now we're going to jump to Numbers 33. This is a log that Moshe makes about all the places that they camp at. We're starting verse 2. And Moshe wrote down the starting points of their departures at the command of Yahweh. And these are their departures according to their starting points. So they departed from Ramesses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow of the Passover. The children of Israel went out with boldness before the eyes of all the Mitzrites. And the Mitzrites were burying all their firstborn whom Yahweh had smitten among them. Also on their mighty ones Yahweh had executed judgments. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy 16, starting in verse 1. Guard the month of Abib and perform the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. And you shall slaughter the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim from the flock and the herd, in the place where Yahweh chooses to put his name. Eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction, because you came out of the land of Mitzrayim in haste, so that you remember the day in which you came out of the land of Mitzrayim all the days of your life. And no leaven should be seen with you in all your border for 7 days. And neither should any of the meat which you slaughter in the evening on the first day stay all night until morning. You are not allowed to slaughter the Passover with any of your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim gives you, but at the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. There you slaughter the Passover in the evening, at the going down of the sun, at the appointed time you came out of Mitzrayim. And you shall roast it and eat it in the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. Okay, now we're going to jump to Joshua 5, starting in verse 2. At that time Yahweh said to Yehoshua, that's Joshua, make knives of flint for yourself, and circumcise the sons of Israel again the second time. So Yehoshua made knives of flint for himself, and circumcised the sons of Israel at the hill of foreskins. And this is why Yehoshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Mitzrayim, who were males, all the men of battle, had died in the wilderness on the way, after they had come out of Mitzrayim. And all the people who came out had been circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness on the way, as they came out of Mitzrayim, had not been circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness, till all the nation, the men of battle who came out of Mitzrayim, were consumed, because they did not obey the voice of Yahweh, to whom Yahweh swore not to show them the land which Yahweh had sworn to their fathers, that he would give us a land flowing with milk and honey. And Yehoshua circumcised their sons, whom he raised up in their place. For they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And it came to be, when they had completed circumcising all the nation, that they all stayed in their places in the camp till they were healed. And Yahweh said to Yehoshua, Today I have rolled away the reproach of Mitzrayim from you. So the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day. And the children of Israel camped in Gilgal, and performed the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening on the desert plains of Jericho. And they ate of the stored grain of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened bread and roasted grain on the same day. And the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the stored grain of the land. And the children of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate the food of the land of Canaan that year. Okay. That's all the commands and all the stories about Passover that are in the Torah. Now we're going to take a break from Scripture and we're going to go ahead with some more parts of our lesson, and we will come back to read some more about some of the kings that had special stories with Passover.
Shabbat Shalom. This is Eleanor with your nature lesson. In our scripture today, they had to sacrifice a lamb. So in our nature lesson, I am going to talk about sheep. A baby sheep is called a lamb, a female is called an ewe, and a male is called a ram. Their lifespan is 10 to 12 years. They eat flowers, grass, weeds, plants, and legumes. You have probably guessed they are herbivores. They can be found in mountain regions, grass plains, and areas with large land stretch. Continents they can be found on are Africa, Europe, Asia, North and South America, and Central America. Their average litter size is 1 to 3 lambs. They are about 50 inches long and can weigh 99 pounds to up to 350 pounds. They are about 36 inches tall. They have an egg-shaped head with a cute little ear on both sides of their heads. Their body is covered in fleece and they have a short tail. Their wool can be black, brown, or white. The main threats to sheep are wolves, coyotes, mountain lions, and other predators. They have a very good memories. They can remember at least 50 individual sheep and humans for years. They produce wool and milk. Sheep have 4 stomach compartments. A group of sheep are called a flock, herd, or mob. Did you know shofars are made from a ram's horn? I hope you learned something new today. That is all for this week. Happy Passover. Shalom.
Happy Passover.
All right, we're back. So, did you catch it? Did you keep your ears open? Did you hear what Miss Kaylee said when she read it? What is the reason why we keep the Passover? If you didn't catch it, it's in Exodus 12:26 and 27, and then again in Exodus 13:8. Y'all go read it because I want you to remember it because it's very, very, very cool. But I'll summarize what it said. It said that Yahweh, the reason why we keep Passover, when our children come to ask us about it, we're to tell them that Yahweh passed over our houses when he destroyed the households of the Mitzrites, and he saved our households. How cool is that? And then again in Exodus 13:8, we're supposed to just say, because of what Yahweh did for us. And so we're supposed to remember that what Yahweh did that day was for us. And we're supposed to go on and on and on until our children. And so we're supposed to be able to feel great about it because if you think about it, Yahweh came down and he rescued us. How awesome is that? It really makes me feel special. Does it make you feel special? I hope so. Yahweh really cares about you and he loves you. All right, let's get in this next segment. I think Miss Kaylee's going to go over some more word searches. She's going to get into the other instances where Passover is. And we're going to do a couple other things. And I'll see you here in just a minute.
Shin and Tav. Aleph, Bet, and Gimel, Dalet, Hey, and Bob, and Zion, Chet, and Tet, and Yod, and Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, and Sade, Kof, and Resh, Sin, and Shin, and Tav.
Shalom everyone, it's Matthew. I hope you're all having a great Passover season. Right now, we're going to look at some Hebrew words in the Passover story. Let's begin with the name of Passover in Hebrew, which is Pesach. Repeat it after me. Pesach. Pesach. This name is related to the verb pasak. He passed over. In Exodus 12:27, it says we celebrate Pesach because he passed over, pasak, the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt. This verb pasak is actually quite rare. Many of its uses are in the Passover story. Usually, if you see the word passed over in an English translation, it's from the verb avar. Every household in Israel is supposed to get a seh, which is a lamb or kid. Repeat that word after me. Seh. Seh. This seh must be tamim, which means without blemish. On the 14th day of the month, they are to slaughter it and put its blood on the 2 doorposts. Doorpost is mezuzot. Mezuzot. And they are also supposed to put the blood on the lintel, the mashkof. Mashkof. To do this, they used a bunch of hyssop, which in Hebrew is azov. Azov. They eat its meat with unleavened bread, which is matzot. Matzot is the plural of matzah, that is, matzot is multiple loaves of unleavened bread, and also with bitter herbs, which are called marorim. Marorim. Today, marorim are usually known in the singular as maror. At midnight, all the firstborn in Egypt were killed, except those in a house with blood on the doorpost and lintel. He passed over, pasak, those houses. Firstborn is Bahor. Bahor. After that, the Israelites were led out of Egypt. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed and that you all have a great Passover. Shalom.
Are you ready for more scripture? Now we're going to get into some stories with some of the kings of Israel. Now, we're jumping ahead in time. The children of Israel have already inherited the land that Yahweh promised them, and they've become a great nation, and they've had many, many kings set up over them. But a lot of the kings of Israel turn away from Yahweh and start worshiping idols. So we're going to read today about a couple of kings who turned back to Yahweh, and they did some very, very, very important things by trying to clean out the nation and turn the people back to Yahweh. So we're going to start in 2 Chronicles 29. Hizkiyahu began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, according to all that his father David did. In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of Yahweh and repaired them, and brought in the priests and the Levites, and gathered them in the open place to the east. And he said to them, "Listen to me, O Levites. Now set yourselves apart, set apart the house of Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, and remove the uncleanness from the set-apart place. For our fathers have trespassed and done evil in the eyes of Yahweh, our Elohim, and have forsaken him, and have turned their faces away from the dwelling place of Yahweh, and have given their backs. And they have shut the door of the porch, and put out the lamps, and they have not burned incense or offered burnt offerings in the set-apart place to the Elohim of Yisrael. Therefore, the wrath of Yahweh fell upon Yehudah and Jerusalem, and he has given them up for a trembling, for an astonishment, and for a hissing, as you see with your eyes. And see, because of this our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Yahweh Elohim of Yisrael, so that the heat of his wrath turns away from us. My sons, do not be slack, for Yahweh has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, to be attendants for him and burn incense. And the Levites rose up, Mahath, son of Amasai, and Yoel, son of Azaryahu, of the sons of the Kehathalites, and of the sons of Merari, Kish, son of Abdi, and Azaryahu, son of Yahathael, and of the Gerashonites, Yoah, son of Samah, and Eden, son of Yoah, and the sons of Elitzaphan, Shimri, and Yaael, and of the sons of Asaph, Sakaryahu, and Mattanyahu, and of the sons of Haman, Yehilel, and Shimei, and of the sons of Yeduthan, Shemaiah, and Usael. And they gathered their brothers and set themselves apart, and went according to the commands of the sovereign, at the words of Yahweh, to cleanse the house of Yahweh. And the priests came into the inner part of the house of Yahweh to cleanse it, and brought out all of the uncleanness they found in the hekel of Yahweh, to the courtyard of the house of Yahweh. Then the Levites received it to take it outside to the Wadi Kidron, and they began to set apart on the first day of the first month. And on the 8th day of the month they came to the porch of Yahweh. And they set apart the house of Yahweh in 8 days, and on the 16th day of the first month they had finished. Then they came into the sovereign Hizkiyahu and said, We have cleansed all the house of Yahweh, and the altar of the burnt offerings with all its utensils, and the table of showbread with all its utensils, and all the utensils which sovereign Ahaz in his reign had pushed aside when he trespassed, we have prepared and set apart, and see, they are before the altar of Yahweh. And sovereign Hizkiyahu rose up early and gathered the heads of the city and went up to the house of Yahweh. And they brought 7 bulls, and 7 rams, and 7 lambs, and 7 male goats for a sin offering for the rain, for the set-apart place, and for Yehudah. And he said to the priests, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of Yahweh. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the priests received the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. And they slaughtered the rams and sprinkled the blood on the altar. And they slaughtered the lambs and sprinkled the blood on the altar. And they brought out the male goats of the sin offering before the sovereign and the assembly, and they laid their hands on them. And the priests slaughtered them, and with the blood made a sin offering on the altar, to make an atonement for all Yisrael. For the sovereign said that the burnt offerings and the sin offering is for all Yisrael. And he appointed the Levites in the house of Yahweh with cymbals, with harps, and with lyres, according to the command of David, and of Gad, seer of the sovereign, and of Nathan the prophet, for the command was by the hand of Yahweh, by the hand of his prophets. And the Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. And Hizkiyahu gave the order to offer the burnt offering on the altar. And when the burnt offering began, the singing unto Yahweh began, with the trumpets and with the instruments of David, sovereign of Israel. And all the assembly were bowing, and the singers singing, and the trumpeters blowing. All this until the burnt offering was completed. And at the completion of the offering, the sovereign and all who were present with him bowed and worshipped, ordered the Levites to sing praises to Yahweh with the words of David and of Asaph the seer. And they sang praises with gladness, and they bowed their heads and worshipped. And Hizkiyahu responded and said, Now that you have ordained yourselves to Yahweh, come near and bring slaughterings and thank offerings into the house of Yahweh. And the assembly brought in slaughterings and thank offerings, and all those whose heart were so moved brought burnt offerings. And the number of the burnt offerings which the assembly brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, 200 lambs, all these for a burnt offering to Yahweh. And the set-apart gifts were 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. Only the priests were too few, and were unable to skin all the burnt offerings. So their brothers, the Levites, helped them until the work was completed, and until the other priests had set themselves apart. For the Levites were more upright of heart to set themselves apart than the priests. And there were also many burnt offerings, with the fat of the peace offering, and with the drink offerings for every burnt offering. Thus the service of the house of Yahweh was reestablished. And Hizkiyahu and all the people rejoiced that Elohim had prepared the people, because the matter came about so suddenly. And Hizkiyahu sent to all Yisrael and Yehudah, And he also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem to perform the Passover to Yahweh, Elohim of Israel. But the sovereign and his leaders and all the assembly of Israel had taken counsel to perform the Passover in the second month, for they were unable to perform it at its time, because not enough priests had set themselves apart, and the people had not gathered at Jerusalem. And the matter was right in the eyes of the sovereign and in the eyes of all the assembly. And they settled the matter to send a call to all Israel, from Beersheba to Dan, to come to perform a Passover to Yahweh Elohim of Israel at Jerusalem, since they had not done it for a long time, as it is written. And the runners went to all Israel and Yehudah with the letters from the sovereign and his leaders, and spoke according to the command of the sovereign. Children of Israel, turn back to Yahweh Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel, so that he returns to the remnant of you who have escaped from the hand of the sovereigns of Ashur. And do not be like your fathers and like your brothers who trespassed against Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, so that he gave them up to ruin, as you see. Do not stiffen your neck like your fathers. Stretch forth the hand to Yahweh, and come to his set-apart place, which he has set apart forever, and serve Yahweh your Elohim, so that his burning wrath turns away from you. And if you turn back to Yahweh, your brothers and your children shall be shown compassion by their captors, even to return to this land. For Yahweh your Elohim shows favor and compassion, and does not turn his face from you if you turn back to him. And the runners passed from city to city throughout the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, as far as Zebulun, but they were laughing at them and mocking them. And some from Asher and Manasseh and from Zebulun, however, humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. Also the hand of Elohim was on Yehudah, to give them one heart to do the command of the sovereign and the rulers, at the word of Yahweh. And many people, a very great assembly, gathered at Jerusalem to perform the festival of unleavened bread in the second month. And they rose up and removed the altars that were in Jerusalem. And they removed all the incense altars and threw them into the Wadi Kidron. And they slaughtered the Passover on the 14th day of the second month. And the priests and the Levites were ashamed, and set themselves apart, and brought the burnt offering to the house of Yahweh. And they stood in their place according to their right ruling, according to the Torah of Moshe, the man of Elohim. The priests sprinkled the blood from the hand of the Levites, for many in the assembly had not set themselves apart. Therefore the Levites were over the slaughter of the Passover for everyone who was not clean, to set them apart to Yahweh. For many of the people, many from Ephraim and Manasseh, Issachar and Zebulun, had not been cleansed. Yet they ate the Passover contrary to what was written. But Hizkiyahu prayed for them, saying, Yahweh, who is good, provide atonement for everyone, who has prepared his heart to seek Elohim, Yahweh Elohim of his fathers, though he is not cleansed, according to the cleansing of the set-apart place. And Yahweh listened to Hizkiyahu and healed the people. So I want you to notice, Hizkiyahu came through and he wanted the temple cleaned, and they took all the altars and all the things that were from idol worship, and they went and they threw it in the Wadi Kidron, and they were cleaning it and getting everything out, and they missed the first month to do Passover because everybody was unclean, or not enough people were clean anyway. So they did it in the second month, as we read just a little while ago, Torah allows for. Now something else that I want you to notice is at the first Passover, each family, they slaughtered their own Passover lamb. But remember, you got to be clean. And so it came this time, even enough priests weren't even clean, that they had to get help from their Levite brothers to also help, because they were more upright of heart, and they were able to be cleaned enough to be able to help them. And so the people weren't clean, so priests and the Levites were doing the offering so that they could at least get the offering done to be able to partake in Passover. And even though they were unclean, Yahweh heard the prayer of King Hizkiyahu, and he forgave them for doing what wasn't right. And Yahweh listened to Hizkiyahu, and he healed them. Now we're going to move to my favorite king, Josiah. I actually named one of my children Josiah, but it's going to be Yoshiyahu in this, but that's talking about King Josiah. Okay, the story of King Josiah is in two books. One in 2 Kings, chapter 22 and 23, and then also in 2 Chronicles, chapter 29 and 30. They're very, very, very similar, so I'm going to just read one of those accounts. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 31 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Yedidah, the daughter of Batsketh. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and walked in all the ways of his father David, and he did not turn aside right or left. And it came to be in the 18th year of sovereign Yoshiyahu that the sovereign sent Shaphan, the scribe, son of Atzalyahu, son of Meshulam, to the house of Yahweh, saying, go up to Hilkiyahu, the high priest. Now I want to stop for a minute. Josiah's high priest's name is Hilkiyahu, and the king that we read about a minute ago is Hizkiyahu. So don't get those confused. Hizkiyahu is the king, Hilkiyahu is the high priest. Okay. Go up to Hilkiyahu the high priest, and let him weigh the silver which has been brought into the house of Yahweh, which the doorkeepers have gathered from the people, and let him give it into the hand of those doing the work, who are the overseers in the house of Yahweh, and let them give it to those who are in the house of Yahweh doing the work, to repair the damages of the house, to carpenters and to builders and to stonemasons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Does this sound familiar? Remember, the king a little while ago was preparing the house of Yahweh too. And here we got King Josiah preparing the house. However, let not the silver given into their hand be reckoned with them, for they are acting trustworthily. And Hilkiyahu the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the Torah in the house of Yahweh. And Hilkiyahu gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the sovereign, and brought the word to the sovereign again, saying, Your servants have gathered the silver that was found in the house, and they have given it into the hand of those who do the work, and oversee the house of Yahweh. And Shaphan the scribe informed the sovereign, saying, Hilkiyahu the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the sovereign. And it came to be, when the sovereign heard the words of the book of the Torah, that he tore his garments. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu the priest, and Ahahim, son of Shaphan, and Achbor, son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah, a servant of the sovereign, saying, Go, inquire of Yahweh for me, for the people and for all Yehudah, concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. Then Hilkiyahu the priest, and Anakim, and Achbor, and Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Hudal, the prophetess, the wife of Shulam, sovereign of Tikwa, son of Harshas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she was dwelling in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And he spoke with her, and she said to them, Thus said Yahweh Elohim of Yisrael, Say to the man who sent you to me, Thus says Yahweh, See, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, all the words of this book which the sovereign of Yehudah has read, because they have forsaken me, and burned incense to other mighty ones, to provoke me, with all the works of their hands. And so my wrath has been kindled against this place, and not be quenched. And to the sovereign of Yehudah, who sent you to inquire of Yahweh, say this to him, Thus said Yahweh Elohim of Yisrael, As for the words which you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Yahweh when you heard what I spoke against this place, and against its inhabitants, and they would become a ruin and a curse, and did tore your garments, and wept before me. I also have heard, declares Yahweh. Therefore see, I am gathering you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace, so that your eyes do not see all the evil that I am bringing on this place. And they brought word to the sovereign. And the sovereign sent, and they gathered all the elders of Yehudah and Jerusalem to him. And the sovereign went up to the house of Yahweh with all the men of Yehudah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. And he read in the hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the house of Yahweh. And the sovereign stood by the column, and made a covenant before Yahweh, to follow Yahweh and to guard his commands, and his witnesses, and his laws, with all his heart and all his being, to establish the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. Then the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu the high priest, and the priest of the second order, and the doorkeepers, to bring out of the hekel of Yahweh all the objects that were made for Baal, and for Asherah, and for all the hosts of the heavens. And he burned them outside Jerusalem and the fields of Kidron. And he took their ashes to Bethel. And he put down their black-robed priests, whom the sovereign of Yehudah had appointed to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Yehudah, and in the places all around Jerusalem, and those who burn incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the hosts of the heavens. And he brought out the Asherah from the house of Yahweh to the Wadi Kidron, outside Jerusalem, and burned it at the Wadi Kidron, and ground it to ashes, and threw its ashes on the graves of the sons of the people. And he broke down the houses of the male cult prostitutes that were in the house of Yahweh, where the women wove tapestries for the Asherah. And he brought all the priests from the cities of Yehudah, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense. Now let me say, now here when it says he's defiling the high places, And when it's going to say he's defiling the altar, it's not talking about Yahweh's altars. It's talking about the places that they were offering to the idols. So he's defiling their altars and their places so that they're not any good anymore. And defiled the high places where the priest had burned incense from Gibeah to Beersheba, and broke down the high places at the gates, which were at the entrance of the gates of Yehoshua, the governor of the city, which were to the left of the city gate. However, the priests of the high places did not come up to the altar of Yahweh in Jerusalem, and they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, so that no man can make his son or his daughter pass through the fire to Moloch. He did away with the horses that the sovereigns of Yehudah had given to the sun at the entrance of the house of Yahweh, by the room of Nathan Melech, the eunuch, that were in the court. And he burned the chariots of the sun with fire, and the altars that were on the roof of the upper rooms of Ahaz, which the sovereigns of Yehudah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the 2 courtyards of the house of Yahweh. The sovereign broke down and rushed from there, and threw their dust into the Wadi Kidron. And the sovereign defiled the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mountain of destruction, which Shlomo, southern of Israel, built for Ashtaroth, the abominations of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abominations for the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And he broke in pieces the pillars and cut down the Asherim, and filled their places with the bones of men, and also the altar that was at Bethel, and the high places which Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, made, by which he made Yisrael sin. Both that altar and that high place he broke down. And he burned the high place, and ground it to dust, and burned the Asherah. Then Yoshiyahu turned and saw the tombs that were on the mountain. And he sent and took the bones out of the tombs, and burned them on the altar, and defiled it according to the word of Yahweh, which the man of Elohim proclaimed. Who proclaimed these words? And he said, What tombstone is this that I see? And the men of the city said to him, It is the tomb of the man of Elohim who came from Yehudah, and proclaimed these matters which you have done at the altar of Bethel. And he said, Let him alone, let no one move his bones. So they left his bones alone, with the bones of the prophet who came from Shemaron. And Yoshiyahu also took away all the houses of the high places that were in the cities of Shemaron, which the sovereigns of Israel had made to provoke. And he did to them according to all the deeds he did in Bethel. And he slaughtered all the priests of the high places who were there on the altars, and burned men's bones on them, and went back to Jerusalem. And the sovereign commanded all the people, saying, Prepare the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim, as it is written in the book of the covenant. For such a Passover had not been prepared since the days of the rulers who ruled Israel, nor in all the days of the sovereigns of Israel and the sovereigns of Yehudah. But in the 18th year of sovereign Yoshiyahu, this Passover was prepared before Yahweh in Jerusalem. And also Yoshiyahu put away those who consulted mediums and spiritists, and the household mighty ones, and idols, and all the abominations that were seen in the land of Yehudah and in Jerusalem, in order to establish the words of the Torah which were written in the book that Hilkiyahu the priest found in the house of Yahweh. And before him there was no sovereign like him, who turned back to Yahweh with all his heart, and with all his being, and with all his might, according to all the Torah of Moshe. And after him none rose up like him. However, Yahweh did not turn from the fierceness of his great wrath with which his wrath burned against Yehudah, because of all the provocations with which Manasseh had provoked him. And Yahweh said, Even Yehudah I shall remove from my presence, as I have removed Israel. And I shall reject this city, Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, My name is there. And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yehudah? Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump to 2 Chronicles, chapter 35. You should read more if you want to find out more about Josiah and the Chronicles, starting in chapter 34. But I'm going to do 35 just because it goes into more detail about the Passover. And Yehoshua performed a Passover to Yahweh in Jerusalem, and they slaughtered the Passover on the 14th day of the first month. And he set the priests in their duties, and strengthened them for the service of the house of Yahweh, and said to the Levites who were teaching all Yisrael, who were set apart to Yahweh, Put the set-apart ark in the house which Shlomo, son of David, sovereign of Yisrael, built. It is no longer to be a burden on your shoulders. Now serve Yahweh your Elohim and his people Yisrael, and prepare by the fathers' houses according to your divisions, by the writing of David, sovereign of Yisrael, and by the writing of Shlomo his son, and stand in the set-apart place by the divisions of the fathers' houses of your brothers, and lay people and the portion of the fathers' houses of the Levites, and slaughter the Passover, and set yourselves apart and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yahweh by the hand of Moshe. And Yoshiyahu gave the lay people lambs and young goats from the flock, all for Passover offerings for everyone present, to the number of 30,300 cattle. These were from the sovereign's possessions. And his leaders contributed a voluntary offering to the people, to the priests, and to the Levites, Hilkiah and Zechariah and Yehiel, leaders of the house of Elohim, and gave to the priests for the Passover offering 2,600 and 300 cattle. And Konayahu, his brothers Shemayahu and Nathaniel, and Hasbayahu, and Yael, and Yozabad, chiefs of the Levites, gave to the Levites for Passover offerings 5,500 cattle. And the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their places, and the Levites in their divisions according to the command of the sovereign. And they slaughtered the Passover, and the priests sprinkled out of their hands while the Levites were skinning. And they removed the burnt offerings to give them to the divisions of the fathers' houses of the lay people, to bring to Yahweh as it is written in the book of Moshe, and the same with the cattle. So they roasted the Passover offering with fire according to the right ruling. And they boiled the set-apart offerings in pots and in cauldrons and in bowls, and brought them speedily to all the lay people. And afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering burnt offerings and fat until night. So the Levites prepared for themselves and for the priests, the sons of Aaron. And the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their places according to the command of David. And Asaph and Heman, Yeduthan, the seer of the sovereign, and the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to leave their position, because their brothers the Levites prepared for them. And all the service of Yahweh was prepared that day to perform the Passover and to offer burnt offerings on the altar of Yahweh, according to the command of sovereign Yoshiyahu. And the children of Yisrael who were present performed the Passover at that time and the festival of unleavened bread. There had not been a Passover performed in Yisrael like it since the days of Shemuel the prophet. And none of the sovereigns of Yisrael had performed such a Passover as Yoshiyahu performed, with the priests and the Levites, and all Yehudah and Yisrael who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu, this Passover was performed. And I'm going to skip down after Yoshiyahu dies. And Yirmiyahu lamented for Yoshiyahu. And to this day all the singing men and the singing women spoke Yoshiyahu in their lamentations, and made it a law in Yisrael. And see, they are written in the laments. And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu and his kindness, according to what is written in the Torah of Yahweh, and his acts from the first to the last, see, they are written in the books of the sovereigns of Yisrael and Yehudah. And it's so sad. Then Josiah, his sons go on to turn and do evil in the eyes of Yahweh. His next son that reigns in his place only reigns for 3 months. And then the next son comes in and he does evil in the eyes of Yahweh. All right, so let's check out a little bit more. I know this is a lot, but let's check out some more with Passover and the prophets. Okay, let's jump to Ezra 6. And as we had on another special, we talked about how Ezra and Nehemiah, the children of Israel, were coming out from having been taken to Babylon, and they were coming out from the exile. So we're going to go to chapter 6. And before we do that, I'm going to give a little bit of history. So we're going to be talking about King Darius in Ezra. And King Darius, he is a king that had to do with Daniel. You remember Daniel in the lion's den? Well, do you remember the story with Daniel when the finger was writing on the wall and he came and he was able to say what it meant? And that king robed Daniel, even though it wasn't a good thing. It was meaning that the Medes and the Persians were going to come take over his kingdom. Well, that night, that's what happened. And that king was killed. Well, Darius was the Mede that took over the reign. And he was pleased with Daniel. And it says that Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in Koresh the Persian. Okay, so that's the king that we're talking about in Ezra. So we had all Yahweh's people. They got took away from their land because they were in disobedience and not listening. And Daniel did a lot of amazing things, and he was dedicated to Yahweh. And then after this, we have this king who's not of Yahweh's people, and he's about to do something amazing. So let's go to chapter 6. Then Darius the sovereign made a decree, and a search was made in the house of the books, wherein also the treasures of Babel were kept. And at Ethmethah, in the palace, which is in the province of Media, a scroll was found, and this was written in it. In the first year of Sovereign Koresh made a decree concerning the house of Elah at Jerusalem. Let the house be built in the place where they brought offerings, and its foundations strongly laid, its height 60 cubits, its width 60 cubits, 3 rows of heavy stones, and 1 row of new timber. Let the expenses be paid for from the sovereign's house. Let the gold and silver utensils of the house of Allah, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the Hekel, which is in Jerusalem, and brought to Babel, be returned, and go to the Hekel, which is in Jerusalem, to its place, and deposit them in the house of Allah. Have you noticed any kind of pattern here? Have you noticed with any of these stories that the house of Yahweh gets fixed up before Passover? Have y'all noticed that? It's pretty cool. Now Tatnai, governor beyond the river, and Selsar Bozanai, and your companions, the officers beyond the river, stay away from there. Leave the work of this house of Allah alone. Let the governor of the Yehudim and the elders of the Yehudim build this house of Allah on its place. And I make a decree as to what you should do for the elders of this Yehudim. For the building of this house of Allah, let the exact expense be paid to these men from the sovereign's resources, out of the taxes beyond the river, so that they are not stopped. And whatever they need, both young bulls and rams and lambs for the burnt offerings of the Allah of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the request of the priests who are in Jerusalem, and let it be given them day by day without fail, so that they bring pleasing offerings to the Allah of heaven, and pray for the life of the sovereign and his sons. And I make a decree that whoever changes this word, let a timber be pulled from his house, and let him be impaled, hanged on it, and let his house be made a dunghill because of this. And Allah, who has caused his name to dwell there, does overthrow any sovereign or people who put their hand to change, to destroy this house of Allah, which is in Jerusalem. I, Yahweh, make the decree, let it be done promptly. Then Tatnai, governor beyond the river, Sethar, Bozanai, and their companions promptly did according to what Yahweh the sovereign had sent. And the elders of the Yehudim were building, and they were blessed through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah son of Iddo. And they built and finished it according to the decree of the Allah of Yisrael, and according to the decree of Koresh, and Yahweh, and Artaxerxes, sovereign of Persia. And this house was completed on the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which was the 6th year of the reign of sovereign Darius. And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the sons of the exile, did the dedication of the house of Allah with joy, and offered up the dedication of this house of Allah 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and a sin offering for all Yisrael, 12 male goats according to the number of the tribes of Yisrael. And they appointed the priests to their divisions, and the Levites to their divisions, over the service of Allah in Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moshe. And the sons of the exile performed the Passover on the 14th day of the 1st month. For the priests and the Levites had cleansed themselves, all of them were clean, and they slaughtered the Passover for all the sons of the exile, and for their brothers the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel, who had returned from the exile, ate together with all who had separated themselves from the uncleanness of the Gentiles of the land, in order to seek Yahweh Elohim of Yisrael. A king of a pagan nation paid everything that was needed for Yahweh's people to go and build Yahweh's house again. And they got the house all perfect again and cleaned up, and they were all clean and set apart and able to do Passover. It's a pretty cool story. Okay, now we're going to jump to Ezekiel 45. We're not going to read the whole thing. It talks about a lot of different offerings and a lot of different things going on there. But we'll start in 18. Thus said the Master Yahweh, in the 1st month, on the 1st of the month, you are to take a young bull, a perfect one, and shall cleanse the set-apart place. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering, and shall put it on the doorpost of the house, and on the 4 corners of the ledge of the altar, and on the post of the gate of the inner courtyard, and do the same on the 7th of the month for anyone who makes a mistake or is foolish, and shall make atonement for the house. In the 1st month, on the 14th day of the month, you have the Passover, a festival for 7 days, unleavened bread is eaten. And on that day the prince shall prepare for himself, and for all the people of the land, a bull for a sin offering. Okay, so that's all the places that are in the Old Testament talking about Passover, or it's the same story with Josiah, so we didn't read all of it again. But we did read the Passover part. So let's take a little break, let's get up and wiggle and go to the bathroom and get a snack, and we'll come back and we'll have some more scripture from the New Testament about Passover.
And baby Rowan's going to blow it.
Happy Pesach! Miss Allison here with history. We hear a lot about Egypt, or Misraim, during Pesach. What typically comes to mind when you hear Misraim? Well, Egypt at the time was the world's dominant power, and it possessed one of the most widespread and ancient false religions. The Egyptians practiced polytheism. Now that's a big word, but what it means is that they believed in many false gods. The pharaoh actually had a dual role and served as both high priest and king. That made the pharaoh responsible for carrying out the will of their false gods. Egyptians are credited as being one of the first groups of people to practice agriculture on a large scale. The Egyptians grew a variety of crops, including grains, vegetables, and fruits. However, their diets revolved around several staple crops, especially barley. Abraham and many of his descendants traveled to Egypt in difficult times for food and shelter. Yosef or Joseph even becomes second in command only to Pharaoh and Misraim, until a new Pharaoh ascends to the throne who didn't know Joseph, as we see in Exodus 1:8. The Egyptians became afraid that the Israelites would continue to grow in number and strength and ultimately enslave the people. Yahuwah hears their cries and raised up Moshe to lead them out of Misraim or Egypt into freedom. After the Israelites escaped slavery in Egypt, Yahuwah instructed them not to follow the ways of Egypt, as we see in Leviticus 18:3. The Israelites had learned a number of pagan traditions while in servitude to the Egyptians. This was the reason for being given a number of laws in the Torah. For example, one of the commands is not to mar the corners of thy beard, and that's found in Leviticus 19:27. It's possible that the command points back to the beards of the Egyptian pharaohs. They were considered to be an attribute of their false gods. Thus, we can understand why Yahuwah would not want this style replicated by the Israelites. Ultimately, Yahuwah used the plagues to warn and punish an entire false religious and political system, and to free an entire civilization from slavery. Praise Yahuwah for past and future redemption for his people. Shalom, friends. Happy Pesach.
people free. Though the Pharaoh's heart is hardened, yet your arm the world will see, stretched out for our deliverance, as to lead us from the grave. A Lamb you're promised to us, that your mighty hand will save. Yahuwah is my light and my deliverance. Whom should I fear? Yahuwah is the refuge of my life. Whom should I dread? When evildoers come against me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they shall stumble and fall. Though an army encamps against me, my heart does not fear. Though battle comes up against me, even then I would be trusted. Teach me your way, O Yahuwah, and lead me in a smooth path, because of my enemies. What if I had not believed to see the goodness of Yahuwah in the land of the living? Wait on Yahuwah, be strong, and let him strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on Yahuwah. Oh, Yah, deliver, save your people, sons of Abraham. Send your hand forth for our salvation. Deliver us our great salvation. Deliver us our great
Happy Passover!
Hasn't this been a great episode? Have you learned a lot about Passover? I know I have. Doesn't it make you feel special? I mean, seriously. It makes me feel special knowing that I'm a part of that. And it should make you feel special too. All right, let's finish up the Sabbath school. We're going to go and investigate all the verses in the New Testament that talk about Passover. Then we're going to have a song. We will have a craft and hopefully have a snack. And I'm suspect that it's going to be an unleavened snack, but we shall see. Anyway, I hope y'all have an amazing feast. I hope you take what you've learned today and think about that as you are celebrating Passover, and it makes it that much more memorable for you. So I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Bye.
became the ultimate sacrifice. The man who was perfectly free became a captive for me. No bond could hold him to the cross, and only love was strong enough. He gave his life of his own choice, that death might finally be destroyed. It's been swallowed up, and I am confident that His love was enough, and the old is gone. Oh, it's been swallowed up. Bye.
All right, welcome back. Now it's time to jump into the New Testament and see what it has to say about Passover. Now, there are several verses that are just one verse. They're not a story. And then we have one story. It mentions the word Passover, but we're going to save that for next week because it really has more to do with after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. One of the verses is your memory verse, so I'm not going to go ahead and discuss that now because you'll have that in a few minutes in your memory verse. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the few verses that are just singular verses and then jump into the big story. And you probably know this is the story about Yeshua's very last Passover. Now, there are 4 books that discuss this event. And what I've tried to do is to take those 4 and combine some of their details and leave out the things that they're saying that are the same. So I want to give you an example. Let's say that your daddy went away on a trip for a whole week, and you have you and a brother and a sister and your mommy at home for that week. And your daddy, when he comes home, he says, I want you to write for me everything that happened while I was gone. Do you think that your story would look exactly like your brother's or exactly like your mother's? Or do you think that maybe y'all would talk about some different things? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you, your stories would be very different. Y'all might talk about the same things some of the time, but sometimes maybe you were in the bathroom when something that your mom wrote about happened. Or maybe you were in the kitchen when your brother was in the living room and he wrote about something, or maybe you were reading a book when the dog ran through the house and knocked off the cake that was on the table, and you didn't actually see it even though you heard some of the things. So your story would look different than your sister who saw it happen. And that's what we have with the different accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, I mostly am looking at Matthew and John, and then I've added in details from Mark and Luke that Matthew and Mark didn't have in their section. So I will have in the description a link to all of this because I'm going to read it as a story. I'm not going to tell you which one's Mark and which one's Luke and which one's John. I'm just going to read it as a story. So for anybody who would like to see which verses are which, I'll have a link to a Google Doc where you can see which one's which. Okay, let's get going and jump into the New Testament. Okay, we're going to start in John 2, and the first part of this is talking about when Yeshua turns the water into wine. So this is at the beginning of his ministry. So we're going to start in verse 11. This, the beginning of the signs Yeshua did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his esteem, and his taught ones believed in him. After this he went down to Capharnaum, he and his mother, and his brothers, and his taught ones, and there they stayed not many days. And the Passover, the Yehudim, was near, and Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the set-apart place those selling oxen, and sheep, and doves, and the money changers sitting. And having made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the set-apart place, with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the money changers' coins, and overturned the tables. And he said to those selling doves, "Take these away. Do not make the house of my Father a house of merchandise." And his taught ones remembered that it is written, "The ardor for your house has eaten me up." And the Yehudim answered and said to him, "What sign do you show to us since you are doing these?" And Yeshua answered and said to them, "Destroy this dwelling place, and in 3 days I shall raise it." Then the Yehudim said, "It took 46 years to build this dwelling place, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But he spoke about the dwelling place of his body. So when he was raised from the dead, his taught ones remembered that he had said this to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Yeshua had said. And when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover, at the festival, many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he was doing. Now I want you to think about some of the other stories that we've read today, and how the kings went and cleaned out the set-apart place before Passover. And Yeshua is the King of Kings, and here he is going in and cleaning out the set-apart place before Passover. So I've never noticed that before and thought that was very interesting. All right, let's keep reading. Now we're going to jump to John 6. Now I'm not going to read this whole thing because it is a whole story and all of it's not on Passover. So I'm just going to read a little bit, starting in verse 3. And Yeshua went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his taught ones. And the Passover was near, the festival of the Yehudim. All right, so then it goes on. There's all these people here, and they're going to feed them, and they don't have food. And the one boy, he says he has 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. And then Yeshua makes that feed everybody that's there. So I'll save that story for another day, but that's what's happening there. Okay, now we're going to jump to Hebrews 11. Now this chapter is all talking about belief. And it's talking about really how we show our belief through what we do. And so it's talking about Jacob and things he did, and by belief what he did. And then it goes to Joseph, and then it goes to Moshe. And so it talks about several things that Moshe did by belief. So I'm going to jump to 27. By belief he left Mitzrayim, not fearing the wrath of the sovereign, for he was steadfast, as seeing him who is invisible. By belief he performed the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By belief they passed through the Red Sea, as by dry land, and when the Mitzrites tried it, they were drowned. So this makes me think of something in James 2, starting in verse 17. So also belief, if it does not have works, is in itself dead. But someone might say, "You have belief, and I have works. Show me your belief without your works, and I show you my belief by my works. You believe that Elohim is one, and do well. The demons also believe, and shudder. But do you wish to know, O foolish man, that the belief without the works is dead?" So that shows us that because Moses believed, that's why he did these things. So just remember, we do our works because we believe. It doesn't mean that we don't have belief. It means that we do have belief. Okay, now we're going to start the story about Yeshua. Now the Passover, the Yehudim, was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to set themselves apart. And so they were seeking Yeshua and spoke among one another, standing in the set-apart place. What do you think? Is he not coming to the festival at all? And both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should disclose it in order for them to seize him. Accordingly, Yeshua, 6 days before the Passover, came to Beth Anya, where Eleazar was, who had died, whom he raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there, and Martha served, while Eleazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Miriam took a pound of costly perfume of nard, anointed the feet of Yeshua, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Then one of his taught ones, Yehuda from Kirioth, son of Shimon, who was about to deliver him up, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 pieces of silver and given to the poor?" And he said this, not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag, and he used to take what was put in it. Yeshua then said, "Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have always." Then a great crowd of the Yehudim learned that he was there, and they came, not on account of Yeshua only, but also to see Eleazar, whom he had raised from the dead. And the chief priests resolved to kill Eleazar as well, because on account of him many of the Yehudim went away and believed in Yeshua. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. See, your sovereign is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with deliverance, humble and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. And when they came near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, then Yeshua sent 2 taught ones, saying to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and straightway you shall find a donkey tied, and a colt with her. Loosen them and bring them to me. And if anyone says whatever to you, you shall say, the master needs them, and immediately he shall send them." And all this took place that it might be filled what was spoken by the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your sovereign is coming to you, meek and sitting on a donkey, even a colt, the foal of a donkey." And the taught ones went, and having done as Yeshua ordered them, they brought the donkey and the colt, and laid their garments on them, and he sat on them. And most of the crowd spread their garments on the way, while others cut down branches from the trees and spread them on the way. And the crowd who went before and those who followed cried out, saying, "Hoshea-na to the Son of David! Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahweh! Hoshea-na in the highest!" At first his taught ones did not understand this. But when Yeshua was esteemed, then they remembered that this was written about him, and that they had done this to him. Therefore the crowd who were with him, when he called Eleazar out of the tomb and raised him from the dead, were bearing witness. On account of this, the crowd also met him, because they heard that he had done this sign. The Pharisees then said among themselves, "You see how you are getting nowhere at all? Look, the world has gone after him." And as he entered into Jerusalem, all the city was stirred, saying, "Who is this?" And the crowd said, "This is Yeshua, the prophet from Nazareth of Galilee." And Yeshua went into the set-apart place of Elohim, and drove out all those buying and selling in the set-apart place, and overturned the tables of the money changers, and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, "It has been written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers." And blind and lame ones came to him in the set-apart place, and he healed them. And there were certain Greeks among those coming up to worship at the festival. These then came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and were asking him, saying, "Master, we wish to see Yeshua." Philip came and told Andre, and in turn Andre and Philip told Yeshua. And Yeshua answered them, saying, "The hour has come for the Son of Adam to be esteemed. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life shall lose it, and he who hates his life in this world shall preserve it for everlasting life. If anyone serves me, let him follow me. and where I am, there my servant shall also be. If anyone serves me, the Father shall value him. Now I myself am troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this reason I have come to this hour. Father, esteem your name. Then a voice came from the heaven. I have both esteemed it and shall esteem it again. So the crowd who stood by and heard it were saying, There has been thunder. Others said, A messenger has spoken to him. Yeshua answered and said, This voice did not come because of me, but for your sake. But when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonders which he did, and the children crying out in the set-apart place and saying, Hoshea-na to the Son of David, they were greatly displeased, and said to him, Do you hear what these say? And Yeshua said to them, Yea, have you never heard, out of the mouth of babes and nurslings you have perfected praise? And having left them, he went out of the city to Beth-Anya, and spent the night there. And returning to the city early in the morning, he became hungry. And seeing a single fig tree by the way, he came to it and found not on it but leaves, and said to it, Let no fruit grow on you ever again. And immediately the fig tree withered. And the taught ones, seeing it, marveled, saying, How did the fig tree wither so soon? And Yeshua answering said to them, Truly I say to you, if you have belief and do not doubt, you shall not only do what was done to this fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, Be removed and be thrown into the sea, it shall be done. And whatever you ask in prayer believing, you shall receive. And going out, Yeshua went away from the set-apart place. And his taught ones came near to point out to him the buildings of the set-apart place. One of his taught ones said to him, Teacher, see what stones and what buildings? And Yeshua answering said to him, Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down. And he sat on the Mount of Olives. The taught ones came to him separately, saying, Say to us, when shall this be? And what is the sign of your coming, and of the end of the age? And Yeshua answering said to them, Take heed that no one leads you astray. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah. And they shall lead many astray. And many false prophets shall rise up and lead many astray. And because of the increase of lawlessness, the love of many shall become cold. But he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And this good news of the reign shall be proclaimed in all the world as a witness to all the nations. And then the end shall come. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. But concerning that day and the hour, no one knows, not even the messengers of the heavens, but my Father only. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your master is coming. And it came to be, when Yeshua ended all these words, he said to his taught ones, You know that after 2 days the Passover takes place, and the Son of Adam is going to be delivered up to be impaled. Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people came together at the court of the high priest, who is called Caiaphas, and plotted to seize Yeshua by trickery and kill him. But they said, Not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. Then one of the 12, called Yehuda from Kerioth, went to the chief priests and said, What would you give me to deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. And from then on he was seeking an occasion to deliver him up. And before the festival of the Passover, Yeshua, knowing that his hour had come, that he should move out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And on the first day of unleavened bread, when they were slaughtering the Passover lamb, his taught ones said to him, Where do you wish for us to go and prepare for you to eat the Passover? And he said, Go into the city to a certain man, and say to him, The teacher says, My time is near. I am to observe the Passover at your house with my taught ones. And the taught ones did as Yeshua had ordered them, and prepared the Passover. And when evening came, he sat down with the 12. And supper taking place, the devil having already put it into the heart of Yehuda from Kerioth, son of Shimon, to deliver him up. Yeshua, knowing that the Father had given all into his hands, and that he had come from Elohim and was going to Elohim, rose from supper and laid aside his garments. And having taken a towel, he girded himself. After that he put water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the taught ones. And he wiped them with the towel with which he was girded. And so he came to Shimon Kepha, and he said to him, Master, do you wash my feet? And Yeshua answering and said to him, You do not know what I am doing now, but you shall know after this. Kepha said to him, By no means shall you wash my feet ever. And Yeshua answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Shimon Kepha said to him, Master, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And Yeshua said to him, He who has had a bath does not need to wash except his feet, but is clean altogether. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would deliver him up. So he said, You are not all clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments, he sat down again. He said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and master, and you say, Well, for I am. Then if I, master and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example, that you should do as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is an emissary greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture might be filled. He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I say to you, before it takes place, that when it does take place, you shall believe that I am. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. When Yeshua had said this, he was troubled in spirit and witnessed. And while they were eating, he said, Truly I say to you, one of you shall deliver me up. And they were deeply grieved and began to say to him, each of them, Master, is it I? The taught ones looked at one another, doubting of whom he spoke. And one of his taught ones, whom Yeshua loved, was reclining on the bosom of Yeshua. Shimon Kepha then motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. And leaning back on the breast of Yeshua, he said to him, Master, who is it? And Yeshua answered, It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Yehuda from Kerioth, son of Shimon. Indeed, the son of Adam goes as it has been written concerning him. But woe to that man by whom the son of Adam is delivered up. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. And Yehuda, he who delivered him up, answering said, Rabbi, is it I? He said to him, You have said it. And as they were eating, Yeshua took bread, and having blessed and broke, he gave it to the taught ones and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And taking the cup and giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, Drink from it, all of you. For this is my blood, that of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many for the forgiveness of sins. And I say to you, I shall certainly not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it anew with you in the reign of my Father. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Yehuda from Kerioth, son of Shimon. And after the piece of bread, Satan entered into him. Yeshua therefore said to him, What you do, do quickly. But no one at the table knew why he said this to him. For some were supposing because Yehuda had the bag, that Yeshua was saying to him, Buy what we need for the festival, or that he should give somewhat to the poor. So having received the piece of bread, he then went out straightway, and it was night. When therefore he went out, Yeshua said, Now the son of Adam has been esteemed, and Elohim has been esteemed in him. If Elohim has been esteemed in him, Elohim shall also esteem him in himself, and straightway esteem himself. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You shall seek me, and as I said to the Yehudim, Where I am going, you are unable to come. I now also say to you, A renewed command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all know that you are my taught ones, if you have love for one another. Shimon Kepha said to him, Master, where are you going? And Yeshua answered him, Where I am going, you're unable to follow me now, but afterwards you shall follow me. Kepha said to him, Master, why am I unable to follow you now? I shall lay down my life for you. Yeshua answered him, Shall you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the cock shall not crow at all until you have denied me 3 times. Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in Elohim, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many staying places, and if not, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you might be too. and where I go you know, and the way you know. Thomas said to him, Master, we do not know where you are going, and how are we able to know the way? Yeshua said to him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father too. From now on, you know him and have seen. Philip said to him, Master, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. And Yeshua said to him, Have I been with you so long, and you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. And how do you say, Show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I speak to you, I do not speak for myself, but the Father who stays in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Otherwise, believe me because of the works themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he shall do also, and greater works than these he shall do, because I go to my Father. And whatever you ask in my name, that I shall do, in order that the Father might be esteemed in the Son. And if you ask whatever in my name, I shall do it. If you love me, you shall guard my commands. And I shall ask the Father, and he shall give you another helper to stay with you forever, the Spirit of the truth, whom the world is unable to receive, because it does not see him or know him. But you know him, for he stays with you and shall be in you. I shall not leave you orphans, I am coming to you. Yet a little while, and the world no longer sees me. But you shall see me, because I live, and you shall live. In that day you shall know that I am in the Father, and you in me, and I in you. He who possesses my commands and guards them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me shall be loved by my Father. And I shall love him and manifest myself to him. Yehuda, not the one from Kerioth, said to him, Master, what has come about that you are about to manifest yourself to us and not to the world? And Yeshua answered him, If anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him. And we shall come to him and make our stay with him. He who does not love me does not guard my words. And the word which you hear is not mine, but of the Father who sent me. These words I have spoken to you while still with you. But the Helper, the set-apart Spirit, whom the Father shall send in my name, he shall teach you all, and remind you of all that I said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You heard that I said to you, I am going away, and I am coming to you. If you did love me, you would have rejoiced that I said, I am going to the Father, for my Father is greater than I. And now I have told you before it takes place, that when it does take place, you shall believe. I shall no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming, and he possesses none at all in me. But in order for the world to know that I love the Father, and that as the Father commanded me, so I am doing, rise up, let us go from here. And having sung a song, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Yeshua said to them, All of you shall stumble in me this night, for it has been written, I shall strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I shall go before you into Galilee. And Kepha answering said to him, Even if all stumble in you, I shall never stumble. But Yeshua said to him, Truly I say to you that this night, before the cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. Kepha said to him, Even if I have to die with you, I shall not deny you. All the taught ones said the same too. Then Yeshua came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and said to the taught ones, Sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with him Kepha and the 2 sons of Zabdi, and he began to be grieved and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, My being is exceedingly grieved, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. He said to them, Pray that you do not enter into trial. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and falling on his knees he was praying, fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I desire, but as you desire. And he came to the taught ones and found them asleep, and said to Kepha, So, were you not able to watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray lest you enter into trial. The spirit indeed is eager, but the flesh is weak. Again he went away a second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, "If it is impossible for this to pass unless I drink it, let your desire be done." And there appeared a messenger from heaven to him, strengthening him. And being in agony, he was praying more earnestly. And his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And raising up from prayer and coming to his taught ones, he found them sleeping from grief. And he said to them, "Why do you sleep? Rise and pray, lest you enter into trial. See, the hour has come near, and the Son of Adam is delivered up into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. See, he who delivers me up has come near." And while he was still speaking, see, a crowd, and he who was called Yehuda, one of the 12, with a large crowd with swords and clubs, was going before them and came near to Yeshua to kiss him. And he who was delivering him up gave them a sign, saying, "Whomever I kiss, it is he. Seize him." And going straight up to Yeshua, he said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. And Yeshua said to him, "Yehuda, do you deliver up the son of Adam with a kiss?" Yeshua then, knowing all that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, "Who do you seek?" They answered him, "Yeshua of Nazareth." And Yeshua said to them, "I am." And Yehuda, who delivered him up, was also standing with them. When therefore he said to them, "I am," they drew back and fell to the ground. Once more he asked them, "Who do you seek?" And they said, "Yeshua of Nazareth." And Yeshua answered, "I said to you that I am. If then you seek me, allow these to go." Then Simon Kepha, having a sword, drew it, and struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. And the servant's name was Melech. Then Yeshua said to Kepha, "Put your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? For all who take the sword shall die by the sword. Or do you think that I am not able to pray to my Father now, and he shall provide me with more than 12 legions of messengers? How then would the scriptures be filled that it has to be this way?" In that hour Yeshua said to the crowds, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to arrest me? Daily I sat with you, teaching in the set-apart place, and you did not seize me. But all this came to be so that the scriptures of the prophets might be filled." Then all the taught ones left him and fled. And those who had seized Yeshua led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Kepha followed him at a distance to the courtyard of the high priest, and he went in and sat with the servants to see the end. And the chief priest and the elders and all the council were seeking false witnesses against Yeshua to put him to death, but found none. Although many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward and said, "This one said, I am able to destroy the dwelling place of Elohim and to build it in 3 days." And the high priest stood up and said to him, "Have you no answer to make? What do these witness against you?" But Yeshua remained silent. So the high priest said to him, "I put you to oath by the living Elohim that you say to us, if you are Messiah, the son of Elohim." Yeshua said to him, "You have said it. Besides, I say to you, from now you shall see the Son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of the heaven." Then the high priest tore his garment, saying, "He has blasphemed! Why do we need any more witnesses? See now, you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think?" And they answering said, "He is liable to death." Then they spat on his face and beat him, and others slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who is the one who struck you?" And Kepha sat outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, "And you were with Yeshua of Galilee." But he denied it before them, saying, "I do not know what you say." And as he was going out into the porch, another girl saw him and said to those there, "And this one was with Yeshua of Nazareth." But again he denied with an oath, "I do not know the man." And after a while those who stood by came to him and said to Kepha, "Truly you are one of them too, for even your speech gives you away." Then he began to curse and to swear, saying, "I do not know that man." And immediately a cock crowed. And the master turned and looked at Kepha. And Kepha remembered the word of Yeshua, who had said to him, "Before a cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times." And going out, he wept bitterly. And morning having come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Yeshua, so as to put him to death. And having bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Yehuda, he who delivered him up, having seen that he had been condemned, repented, returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and to the elders, saying, "I have sinned in delivering up innocent blood." And they said to him, "What is that to us? You see to it." Then throwing down the pieces of silver in the dwelling place, he left, and went and hanged himself. And the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, "It is not right to put them into the treasury. See, they are the price of blood." So they took counsel and bought them the potter's field for the burial of strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood until today. Then was filled what was spoken by Yirmiyahu the prophet, saying, "And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him who was pierced, on whom they of the children of Israel set a price, and gave them for the potter's field, as Yahweh had ordered me." And Yeshua stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, "Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim?" And Yeshua said to him, "You say it." And as he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he answered not. Then Pilate said to him, "Hear how much they witness against you?" And he did not answer him, not one word, so that the governor wondered much. And at the festival the governor used to release to the crowd one prisoner whom they wished. And they then had a well-known prisoner called Barabbas. So when they were assembled, Pilate said to them, "Who do you wish I release to you, Barabbas or Yeshua, who is called Messiah?" For he knew that because of envy they had delivered him up. And as he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, "Have none at all to do with this righteous man, for I have suffered much today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowds that they should ask for Barabbas and to destroy Yeshua. And the governor answering said to them, "Which of the two do you wish I release to you?" And they said, "Barabbas." And Pilate said to them, "What then shall I do with Yeshua, who is called Messiah?" And they all said to him, "Let him be impaled." And the governor said, "Indeed, what evil has he done?" And they were crying out all the more, saying, "Let him be impaled." And when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but rather an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of the blood of this righteous one. You shall see to it." And all the people answering said, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them. But having Yeshua whipped, he delivered him over to be impaled. Then the soldiers of the governor took Yeshua into the court, and gathered the entire company of soldiers around him. And having stripped him, they put a scarlet robe on him, and plaiting a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they kneeled down before him and mocked him, saying, "Greetings, sovereign of the Yehudim." And spitting on him, they took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him, then put his own garments on him, and led him away to be impaled. And as they were going out, they found a man of Cyrene, Shimon by name. They compelled him to bear his stake. And when they had came to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull, they gave him wine mixed with bile to drink. And after tasting, he would not drink it. And having impaled him, they divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be filled what was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. And sitting down, they guarded him there. And they put up over his head the written charge against him, "This is Yeshua, the sovereign of the Yehudim." Then 2 robbers were impaled with him, one on the right and another on the left. Then Yeshua, seeing his mother and the taught one whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, "Woman, see your son." And then to the taught one he said, "See your mother." And from that hour that taught one took her to his own home. And those passing by were blaspheming him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who destroy the dwelling place and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the son of Elohim, come down from the stake." And likewise the chief priests and the scribes and elders mocking said, "He saved others. He is unable to save himself. If he is the sovereign of Israel, let him come down from the stake, and we shall believe him. He trusted in Elohim. Let him rescue him now if he desires it. For he said, I am the son of Elohim." And also the robbers who were impaled with him reviled him, saying the same. And one of the evildoers who were hanged was speaking evil of him, saying, "If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us." But the other, responding, rebuked him, saying, "Do you not even fear Elohim, since you are under the same judgment? And we indeed rightly so, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this one has done no wrong." And he said to Yeshua, "Master, remember me when you come into your reign." And Yeshua said to him, Truly, I say to you today, you shall be with me in paradise. And from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my El, why have you forsaken me? Some of those standing there, having heard, said, This one calls Eliyahu. And immediately one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, Leave it, let us see if Eliyahu comes to save him. And Yeshua cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And see, the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth was shaken, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the set-apart ones who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the set-apart city and appeared to many. And when the captain and those with him who were guarding Yeshua saw the earthquake and all that took place, they feared exceedingly, saying, Truly, this was the Son of Elohim. Therefore, since it was the preparation day, that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high one, the Yehudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken, and that they be taken away. Therefore the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first, and of the other who was impaled with him. But when they came to Yeshua and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and instantly blood and water came out. And he who has seen has witnessed, and his witness is true. And he knows that he is speaking the truth in order that you might believe. For this took place in order for the scripture to be filled, not one of his bones shall be broken. And again another scripture says, They shall look on him whom they pierced. And after this, Joseph of Ramathaim, being a taught one of Yeshua, but secretly, for fear of the Yehudim, asked Pilate that he might take the body of Yeshua. And Pilate gave permission. Therefore he came and took the body of Yeshua. And Nicodemus, who at first came to Yeshua by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds. Then they took the body of Yeshua, and bound it in linen wrappings with the spices, as was the habit of the Yehudim for burial. And at the place where he was impaled there was a garden, and in the garden a fresh tomb in which no one had yet been laid. And having taken the body, Joseph wrapped it in clean linen, and laid it in his new tomb which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb, and went away. And Miriam from Magdala was there, and the other Miriam, sitting opposite the tomb. There then, because of the preparation day of the Yehudim, they laid Yeshua because the tomb was near. On the next day, which was after the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, Master, we remember while he was still alive, that the deceiver said, After 3 days I am raised. Command then, that the tomb be safeguarded until the 3rd day, lest his taught ones come by night and steal him away, and should say to the people, He was raised from the dead, and the last deception shall be worse than the first. So Pilate said to them, You have a watch, go, safeguard it as you know how. And they went and safeguarded the tomb, sealing the tomb, and setting the watch. Well, we will hear more of this story next week on our Unleavened Bread special. And there's some other stories that have the word Passover in it, but they're more suited for the Unleavened Bread special. So we'll do those next week as well. All right, well, let's get going with the rest of our lesson. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and Chag Sameach! For our Passover special today, our verse is Corinthians Aleph, or 1 Corinthians 5:7. Let's take our first look at it. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, was slaughtered for us. Corinthians Aleph, 1 Corinthians 5:7. Alright, I'm going to take some parts of this verse out and you're going to fill in the blanks. Pause the video if you need more time. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, was slaughtered for us. Corinthians Aleph, 1 Corinthians 5:7. Very good. Now let's try it another time. Again, pause the video if you need more time to figure it out. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, was slaughtered for us. Corinthians Aleph, 1 Corinthians 5:7. Awesome, now it's time to try reciting your memory verse. Give yourself more time by pausing the video, and give yourself some grace because you might not get it right the first time. There will be a little countdown letting you know when I'm going to say the verse again. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, was slaughtered for us. Corinthians Aleph, 1 Corinthians 5:7. You did awesome, guys. Good work. So now let's discuss this verse. Honestly, there probably isn't that much to discuss. I bet you guys probably know why I picked this verse. Can you guys tell me why? If your answer was because it's Pesach, you're about right. This verse talks about Messiah being our Passover or Pesach sacrifice, but he was the one who saved us from the second death, as it says in Revelation, by giving his own blood to be put on the doors of our hearts. Just like the blood of the lamb in the first Passover was put on the doors of the houses so that the angel of death would be kept from coming in. It's so amazing how Yah used the feast to point to Yeshua so many times. This verse also talks about unleavened bread, as does our next memory verse that we'll be having during our unleavened bread special, so stay tuned to learn more about that. With that, here's your memory verse. Remember to keep practicing it as much as you need, and who knows, by the time Passover comes, maybe you can say it at your Seder. I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful Pesach season celebrating Yeshua, our Passover lamb, and his sacrifice for you. Shabbat Shalom!
Happy Passover!
Shabbat Shalom, boys and girls. This is Miss Anaya with today's craft and snack. For today's craft, you're going to need black, red, and brown construction paper, notebook paper or ruler, glue stick, a crayon marker, pen or pencil, and scissors. We're going to start out by measuring our paper. I did mine 6 by 6, but feel free to do yours whichever length you wish. Now that you've finished measuring, you can cut your paper out, but make sure you have adult supervision. Once you finish, it should look something like this. Now measure and cut your black paper. That will become your door. Now that it's all cut out, measure about 1/4 inch and just draw a light line. Now that that's done, you're going to glue that line and stick it on your brown paper. Leave about 1 inch on each side. Next, you're going to measure and cut out your notebook paper. Now that your paper is cut out, you're going to write your memory verse. I wrote down Exodus 12:13, but you could use whatever verse you'd like. Now you're going to turn your paper around and glue the back, and then glue it behind your door. You're going to want to make sure that your paper is cut a little bit smaller so it fits perfectly behind the door. Next, you're going to trace around the door with a crayon or a marker. These will be your doorposts. Next, you're going to use a brown crayon marker or pen to draw lines and little knots on your doorposts. It should look something like this when you finish. Next, you're going to cut up the red paper. That's going to be the blood. You can cut it in fun shapes that fit inside the doorpost. Now that you have all your shapes cut out, you're going to glue them to the doorpost. When you're done, it should look something like this. If you want, you can use some brown scrap paper to make a little door handle. And that's it. You completed your craft. If you wanted to, you could take several of these and glue them onto cardboard boxes to make a little village. For today's snack, we're going to make caramel popcorn sheep. All you need is popcorn, butter, brown sugar, marshmallow cream or kosher marshmallows, and grapes. The first thing you have to do is melt your butter and marshmallow. After it's melted, add your brown sugar. Once your butter mixture is all done, you're going to pour over your popcorn and mix it all in. Once it's all mixed in, butter your hands and form the mixture into balls. But make sure to let it cool down first so you don't burn yourself. Once you have all your popcorn balls made, you're going to use your toothpicks to stick the grapes into the popcorn ball for the head. And after you finish, you'll have yourself a flock of popcorn lambs. Well, that's all for today. I pray you all have a blessed Shabbat and happy Passover. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Father, for this Shabbat and for this special episode of Trained Up in Torah. We're so excited to celebrate your special set-apart days of Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits. And we're so thankful that you chose to show your children your special appointed times and how to walk in your Torah. We thank you especially for Yeshua, who paid the price for our sins and brought the hope of redemption to us, becoming our Passover lamb, setting us free from sin and death and making a way for us to be with you forever. We pray that you would bless each person watching this today, and that you would lead and guide each step that we take as we continue in the week. May we all truly honor and please you in all that we say and do. And it's in Yeshua's precious, wonderful name we pray. Amen. Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom.
Happy Passover!
Hey, what's up to it, kids? Shabbat Shalom. Hey, should we say Shabbat Shalom? This is the Passover one. Should we saying Happy Passover? I'm not going to be watching it on Passover. I might not be watching it on Sabbath, but I always say Happy Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom. I don't know what to do. I mean, oh, what was that? Y'all haven't said... Hey, what's up, y'all? Hasn't this been a great Passover? Hey, what's up, y'all? Has it... What gonna... Ah! Man, I hope this works out, because I've done did this segment like 50 times.